some of his upcoming tours. He does a Black History tour and a stained glass tour, and I forgot about the Prohibition tour, the brewery tour. So, without further ado, please welcome Stuart McMillan.
Was it on? There, you got to speak the right way. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to roam around here a little bit tonight, and maybe Lynn, you can help me with some of the visual aids, but I want to hold them up and stuff. Yeah, I think we should talk about my tour just a little bit. Some people were asking questions, and I said hold off just for a few minutes. I do a lot of the tours out of East Point over here on Stevens Road, and this fall we're doing a Prohibition tour on September 23rd. It's going to include going through St. Clair Shores, Grosse Pointe, downtown Detroit, and over to Windsor. And we do a little bit of drinking along the way too, and mix in the history with the fun and adult beverages and stuff. So that's September 23rd, all-day thing. We're doing a Tiffany window tour again for the 5th time in 2 years. Mostly churches downtown Detroit. September 29th. October 6th, we're doing a Poivre Tile tour. The plan today is to talk about Detroit streets. And thanks a lot for coming out tonight. It's kind of crummy night here tonight. And I know I'm kind of looking kind of crazy here with my summer outfit, but it still is summer. And I was so hot so many days this summer, I'm still going this route. And I put the jeans on, but I'm going to stay this way for a little longer. Okay. Let me go through a few little visual aids over here first. Here's a wonderful book of Detroit's history called Silas Farmer, History of Detroit, 1890 edition. So everything before 1890, this is an in-depth book. Only book I ever paid $200 for. So that's 1890 version with a new cover here. We're going to talk about Adams Street today, downtown Detroit. We're going to talk about Franklin Street. So there's books on these two wonderful men recently. We always get a lot of books we want to read here, and I got a big stack of them. This one I haven't done too much with. This is David McCullough's wonderful book, talking about Adams and Jefferson both, in this one. And y'all know where Adams Street is? Can you picture that? Right by Grand Circus Park there? Sure. And I taught at Wayne State now for about 10 years, from 1994 to 2003. And my textbooks down there were this new AIA guide on architecture and history in Detroit. It's an updated version about 3 years ago. It's a great book on Detroit's history as well as architecture. The AIA guide. And about 10 years ago, they came out with a great book, the DIA, all about the art down there, thing right there. Elmwood Cemetery has a great book. Of course, a lot of people here, that's the most famous cemetery in Detroit, I think. Mount Elliott, right next door, is the Catholic cemetery, and that's the oldest one. But the prettiest one is next door, probably Elmwood Cemetery. And my Underground Railroad tour this fall, we're going to go down to feature the new Cincinnati Underground Railroad Museum in Cincinnati, and also a town called Ripley, where there's this famous John Parker and John Rankin were. And one of the women that's going on the tour just found out when she was about age 59 she has a black love in her. Okay, so we had a little party at my house recently. Some of the people were going on the tour, and we just had a very emotional experience talking about that and how a book about her family. She helped write this book. So this whole experience of race is still a big thing in the country. I've got my Harriet Tubman T-shirt on here, and one of the ladies that's going on the tour again this year is Eva Black. How many know Eva Black out here? She makes the presentations, and she role plays Harriet Tubman. Then we have a whole bunch of professors coming from Kalamazoo, two, they're friends and things. But we're going to have a good trip on that. Up here I have some photos. You can come up here and look at some of this stuff later on. I'm going to show you right now. Maybe you can't see it too close. But I went to Cadillac's hometown in France in 2001. Spent 19 days driving around France, trying to find the hometowns of guys like Livernois, St. Aubin, Rivard, Shane, and people like that. And I had a pretty tough time knowing about 10 words of French. Get the dictionary out and smile a lot. But I did get to St. Nicholas de la Grave, down in the south where Cadillac was born. And so there's pictures of his hometown there. And what I want to do is now is go across here and show you some of the things on the history of Detroit streets. As we go along here now, feel free to ask questions or make comments or feel free to come out with it. This one right here is a really neat thing. How many have heard of the Articles of Confederation in U.S. history class? Now they had a bad reputation for not getting much done, but one of the things they did that was really good was they passed the land ordinance of 1785. That existed from 81 to 87 after the Revolution. And they pretty much divided up Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois into all the squares, right? I mean, you see it out here with all the roads. And this other chart down here will show it later on with all the mile roads. 8 Mile Road, the baseline road, and things like that. But this one shows how the land ordinance said there's going to be 36 sections in a township. And then there's townships are 6 miles square. So you number all the sections. In a one-room schoolhouse, it's usually either 15 or 16 right here. In these 5 states now, they set it up this way. So you could be in Philadelphia or Boston or New York, and then you get on the Erie Canal and come over here and come right to your little square, right? And they set it up so you had 640, 320, 160, farm, Illinois, late 40s. 160 acres didn't mean much to me then. But that was 1/4 of a section there. And then the 80 and the back 40 and all that kind of stuff. And that explains how this all worked. It worked so well for these 5 states, pretty much the rest of the country has done the same thing, except Texas, I think. It's just too big and you would have, the whole state should be bigger plots. So that's kind of just the thing there in terms of how they set up all that. And then, okay, so that's that. So let's start off with now, when Detroit in the beginning, there was Indians here. Some of the major Indian tribes were the Hurons, the Ottawas, the Potawatomis, the Miamis. And that little thing I gave you here, it's page 1 there, it shows you a little bit where the various tribes were. You got right across from the Belle Isle with the Ottawas, around the Ambassador Bridge with the Potawatomis, and downtown Windsor maybe was the Hurons. Just an idea about where they were. And up here now is the Woodward plant. Judge Augustus Woodward, when he got here, he designed downtown Detroit streets here. That's what that little square is up there, from Jefferson back to Adams, and from the Chrysler Freeway over to Lodge Freeway, pretty much, more or less, he designed and that plan there. Okay, so that's, okay, that's where they go. Okay. Now, some of the Indian tribes had names for Detroit. Yantadega. Well, I'm not trying to pronounce the rest of them. I'm not sure how. But yeah, here they are. Yantadega. Yeah, great village. And there is a club downtown, right there by the Moross House, called the Yantadega Club, real exclusive club. And this meant Crooked Way. This meant Coast of the Straits. And this meant, the Iroquois said this. Iroquois. Okay. Yeah. Series of grunts. Okay, that's that. Now, Detroit streets really are based on 4 things, right? When Cadillac shows up here in Hart Plaza, now one of the things I'm going to do sometimes is talk about then and now, right? Because today it's Hart Plaza, right? But right around Hart Plaza, they pulled up there, and this is pretty much what he saw in downtown Detroit. He saw Indian trails. Of course, they weren't named this yet, but they pull up right about here. Right along here, by where the Ford Auditorium is. And the river, picture the river being about at least 100 to 150 yards wider on both sides. They did landfill along on both sides. Okay, so Grash, of course, going out this way. The river going all the way up to Pontiac, all the way up to Bay City, more or less. The Indians coming that way. And this goes all the way where now? Grand River. The Lansing, and all the way to Lake Michigan. Grand Haven. You could drive along there, it becomes 96 some of the time. That's another major Indian trail then. The Michigan Avenue going where? Chicago, Highway 12. And the Jefferson along the river were pretty much the basic Indian trails. Northwestern Highway was out here. 4th Street was sort of one. But those are the major. So one of the Detroit streets are based on 4 things. Okay, one is Indian trails or the spoke streets. Okay, so that's number 1. Okay, then, so they put the Ford in. And the Ford, the Savile River came around like this, through Coble Hall, Buell Building, things like this. And so they wanted to have water maybe on 3 sides, because they were worried about, the French were worried about what people? Well, a couple of different groups. The Indians and the British down there, okay? So they wanted to have a situation with water surrounding them there. And so they chose this spot like in Hart Plaza, kind of high up there. And the first 4 street names in Detroit were here. See, St. Jacques, St. Joseph, St. Anne, and St. Louis. Now, they maybe went inside the 4th, but anyway, these are the basic first 4 streets after the French saints. And I even have a little description of who these guys are. Now, you know Joseph, I mean, that's father of Jesus, right? That's pretty easy there. And Anne is the mother of Mary. Like St. Anne's Church, the day after they started building the fort, they started the church. Right there at Griswold and Jefferson. So they did that St. Anne after the mother of Mary. The other people now, St. Jacques was a Jesuit who was killed by the Huguenots. You know, the Protestants and the Catholics were fighting. So they named it after him. Then one of the Louis IX, who started St. Chapelle in the Sorbonne, the university there in Paris, and he just become a culture guy. They decided to name one of the streets after him too. So those are the first 4 street names in Detroit that the Europeans named. Okay. And then this fort, we talked about where that little box was. It's pretty much these streets right here: Jefferson, Larned, Shelby, and Griswold, but maybe a little further down this way. Okay, maybe not quite Larned. Maybe it's closer to the Veterans Memorial Building over here. It's about where the fort walls were, more or less. Okay, that's where Pontchartrain. Who was Pontchartrain? I've got him in my notes there, but he was the minister of Marine. He was sort of told Cadillac to leave Montreal, to leave it to Mackinac. He was up north to come down here and put this fort in. Well, for what 2 reasons? Why did the French come down here now? Two basic reasons. The fur trade, because they trapped out the UP and Montreal area and all up in there, and then to stop the British from coming. They were the 2 top nations in the world at that time. Put a fort down here so the Brits wouldn't come up here from Pittsburgh and around that way. So that's why the fort went in, you know, why they came here.
I got a question.
Yeah, anytime.
I know a little bit about this, but one thing I just noticed, at that time when that quote was made, it was 100% French.
Yeah.
I'm assuming these are English names,
Like
like Shelby, Jefferson.
Oh, yeah, these are names here, yeah, right. What Shelby, over here, yeah. We're gonna get into that later on. We're gonna discuss all those names tonight. We'll be here for 10 right now. Hopefully, I just brought 1 tray. I have 2 trays, and we also have this movie that I just dug up. I thought about this last night. I was typing this thing up late last night. That I had this old film that Dr. Goodman at Wayne State had. And where is that film? So I found this. So I called in today. You got to get a projector. He made this back in the early 50s. And it's some guy from Chicago that doesn't know how to pronounce rash. He's got rash shit. I mean, it's just really kind of, and they talk about Woodward becoming a centric person and things like this, but we're going to show that tonight too. And then after that, we'll have a slideshow. This old movie. Okay, so yeah, these are English names, and we'll get into all these people here. And now, another set of, after the French settled in here, the fort, then they started selling the land to the French farmers. We're going to talk about Riopelle here, Brevard. I lived in Brevard and Grosse Pointe out there. The Brevards originally settled downtown Detroit, then they moved to Grosse Pointe, some of the sons and stuff. So Beaubien, St. Antoine, Moran, Brevard, Riopelle, DeQuinder went all the way through at one time. Now it stops at Mack Avenue up there. St. Aubin, Du Bois, Shane, Joseph Confor, just some of the ribbon farms. And they did a lot of this from Montreal all the way down here, along the St. Lawrence River, the little ribbon farms. So the farmhouses were down by the river, and there were farms about 1 block wide, about 2 or 3 miles long, back to Mack or Harbor. So everyone has access to the water with their canoes and transportation. So we talked about the Indian trails and the ribbon farms. And now we come to the mile roads. We sort of talked about that already. So 8 Mile Road was the baseline road. You know, they drew that all the way across Michigan, all the way across Lake Michigan, and it's the border between Wisconsin and Illinois. Does it show that on that? Here. No, you don't have that man. But it's up here. Just trust me, it is. The border between Wisconsin and Illinois is 8 Mile Road. And then they did it perpendiculars off of that. And so some of the mile roads, okay, 8 Mile Greener, 7 Mile Moross. We're going to talk about Moross. We're talking about McNichols. Well, actually, we're not going to talk about, he's not my slideshow. Who is McNichols? At UAD, he was a president there at one point, I think in the 30s or 40s, UAD. McNichols. That's 6 Mile. And someone just mentioned also earlier, just walked up here, McNichols 6 Mile and for the east side here. Seymour. Around W High School there? Yeah, Seymour, right. That's what you talked about. Right? 5 Mile Spangle, he was a school board member, I think. Schoolcraft was a fantastic guy. He spoke all about 5 Indian languages. He walked around this Midwest like Cass did and explored. And then Plymouth, well, just because of the history of Plymouth Rock. I'm going to England and France again this fall, and we're going to go down that one corner where Plymouth is, and all the way out to Land's End. So I've never been to Plymouth, England before. The Joy was a big, with Packard Motor Car Company, and they were also in lumber at one time. I did a Packard Motor Car Company tour this past summer. Packard had their international convention here this past year, so they're all over the world. But they Joy's had their place in Grosse Pointe, so that's Joy Road is 2 Mile Road. Then Warren is 1 Mile Road. And this is an interesting one here, especially for this part of the area. This guy is a famous guy. If you go to Bunker Hill, which I just did last spring too, and walk the red line, and you get up there and I talk about Joe Warren. They talk about Joseph Warren a lot. He was killed at the Battle of Bunker Hill when the third wave. He was a doctor. And they said, you're an important guy, you should probably get back, because we were going to beat him this time. He didn't, he got killed there. But he was a physician who fought at the Battle of Bunker Hill, and they named Warren, Michigan after him, Warren Avenue. And there's not much recognition of that around here. There's a little statue down there on Warren Avenue and 3rd Street. It's about this big, right on Wayne's campus. There's Warren sitting there. And Warren's building a new city hall right now. They're doing something right there. They said they should do something about Joseph Warren there. It's my little editorial. And by the way, that's a good way to go across town, Detroit. When the expressways are all clogged up, you get down to Mack and Warren if you're in that area. Follow Warren all the way through. And they pick it up at Ford Freeway and miss all that stuff downtown. Because these are straight shot roads, see. And 0 Mile is Ford Road. And also it ends up down at Campus Marshes too. Campus Marshes, they just found some of that stuff recently digging around down there. So that's 0 Mile Road. And that's just some basic stuff there about that. Okay. Now here's some, I live in India Village in Detroit in the last 10 years. And there's a magazine here about India Village. I'm selling these for like $2 each, one for $1. Gonna make a lot of gas money come out here from India Village. Then also another book I had at Wayne State all about sculpture in Detroit right here. It's a great thing for sculpture. You know, Joe Louis Fisk, there's Christopher Columbus. Here's on Belle Isle. There's all kinds of cool things. One of my 4 textbooks for Wayne State. Art in public places. Then I did a lot of Ford tours in the early 2000, getting ready for 2003. And so I'm selling these newspapers here with Ford. They might become a collector's item really soon if things keep on going bad. Boy. But anyway, it's a great thing here. $1 each for this, with a lot of history in here. If you want those. Anything else right now? Well, here's an Alexander McComb. I bought this at the Bath City thing here. And this guy's an amazing fellow here. He owned Belle Isle one time. He owned Grosse Ile. He won the Battle of Plattsburgh out there. And there's a statue of him, of course, Mount Clemens here, and then downtown in front of the Blue Cadillac. He's back. They tore up, all the red pipes are out of downtown. They're down out of there. And they took him down to do that. But now he's back in front of the Blue Cadillac, which hopefully, keep your fingers crossed, we're going to fix up the Blue Cadillac. But he's an amazing guy, Alexander McComb. So should we start the movie? So one thing, on the little handout you have, before we start the movie, what you have here now is basically here. This is the Woodward plan there. He did this in 1805. So Thomas Jefferson sent Woodward here to be a judge. Thomas Jefferson, 1805, to be a judge. What happened right before he got to Detroit? The whole city burned down. So he said, you can't be a judge if there's no city, so you have to lay out downtown Detroit again. So he copied Washington, D.C., and copied Paris, France, because he was really a cultured person. He changed his first name to Augustus, like Augustus Caesar. He named Gippsland, Michigan. He was the George Washington of Greece, who threw the Turks out. And so we're going to name him after that famous Greek guys who threw the Turks out. And so he was quite an instrumental guy in Detroit's and Michigan's history. But anyway, that's the Woodward plan there. He decided to design Detroit's streets with a whole lot of circles like geometry class. And you got Grand Circus Park there, you've got Capitol Park, Campus Marshes, and then by the time they get out to Adams Street, right here by the Fox Theater, right about there, people said, that's enough, let's get back to rectangles again. So it ended right there. And then the slides we're going to see after a while start here on page 2, see? And I just wrote up some stuff for you. So that goes all the way to page 7. You know, page 7, page 7, I have some just general stuff on Detroit history. I stuck that in the bottom of that page. It's not real classic work of ours. I'm not worried about the grade or anything. Just give you the information. But there it is for that. And then page 8, I got this out of Silas Farmer's book. It's one page of that, one little, less than half a column of 180 things we made in Detroit before 1890 in alphabetical order. This just kind of blew me away. So I made it print real big so they can all read it. Right? But just look at that sometime. This is what we did before we made cars. So with cars, and Motown, and music, and cars, and all that. But listen, this is what we did to get ready for the cars. And look at that stuff. That's amazing right there to me. Okay, so. Good. Now we'll start this movie. I haven't seen it in a few years.
Sure.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Not a question,
Good.
but a comment.
Anytime.
Yes, to Bill,
Sure.
I used to raise, I'm retired, have been for 15 years, used to raise funds for the Catholic Church, which would take me all over the country. Anyway, I was in the, running in a parish in Detroit several years ago, and the pastor had on his wall a beautiful framed, beautifully written. A woman from Port Huron gave it to her, and it was a list of all the residents in Detroit in 1752.
There wouldn't be that many now. I mean, in 1820,
Well,
there's only like 4,000 people here.
So anyway, it was too big to try to copy on the machine, so I wrote it down and gave it to, I had 12 children, and I gave one each, and I couldn't find it, or I bought it. But, you know, that showed a lot of the people at the streets are named after it.
So, and I can't remember the priest.
Well, and what church was it?
I don't know, I can't remember what parish.
But yeah, Detroit street names, Elmwood Cemetery, Mount Elliott, you go in there and you see them all around. I mean, Mount Elliott are the Catholic people mostly. Okay, and then Elmwood was non-denominational. Okay, any other questions or comments before we start the movie? Yes, sir.
Could you tell us about Louis Cass?
Well, he's probably the most famous person from Michigan ever in terms of politics. And I got a whole bit of stuff written down at the bottom. Secretary of State, governor, territorial governor, and he also walked around with Schoolcraft. They walked from here to where the Mississippi River begins, between walking in canoes and horses. Picture that, upper Minnesota. I drove it two years ago. I drove it all the way around the top. I got tired driving the car. They're out there, they don't have McDonald's or Motel 6, nothing like that. And they're going all around. So Louis Cass is an amazing person. The Indians call him Big Belly. He's the one that came up with the slogan, if you seek a pleasant peninsula, look around you. And he invented that. And he had arguments with Abraham Lincoln about, are we Michiganders or Michiganians? And I forgot who said what, and I don't even know what the right answer is. What are we? Okay. Yeah.
My uncle's name was the great-great-grandson
What's who?
of Louis Cass.
Louis Cass.
His name was Augustus Canfield Ledger.
That's right. The Letters and the Canfields and the Casses are kind of all buried in that one spot in Elmwood Cemetery. There's a lot of intermarrying of a lot of these families. Canfield Street downtown, Letters were involved in trains. Yep. And we could, lots of interesting stuff. So should we start this now?
Yep.
So we'll start the movie, and we'll cross our fingers about this. Okay, now lights on, I think here.
He didn't know where it was famous. I did it, but,
No, that's so here. Well, that's not a parking hand stamp right there. It's about 1953 or so. I went to Europe with this guy. Got the government in '64. Lift it up a little bit.
let's see it.
So those are the streets right there. The Indian trails. See the white things? Are the Indian trails. Robert Goodman and one of his students made this movie. He died about 4 years ago, Dr. Goodman. We went to Russia together.
To an overhead observer, the street pattern of Detroit presents a strange mosaic of conflicting systems, which seem to start and end with no apparent reason, and to have no relation with each other. However, the twists and turns have their historic explanation. It all began when a group of Frenchmen, led by Cadillac, landed at the site of Detroit on July 24, 1701. Their settlement, Fort Township Plain, was protected on three sides by water, and its four main streets parallel the shoreline of the river.
That's where I learned this.
Cadillac's wise Indian policy helped Detroit to become an important fur trading post. The site, which provided a narrow crossing in the Great Lakes system, was a focal point for Indian traders, even before the white man. With its new function as a trading center, more trails were worn through the wilderness. After 6 decades, French rule was replaced by the British. It, in turn, gave way to American control.
1796.
When the newly appointed American administrators arrived at their Michigan territorial capital, they found that a tragic fire had completely destroyed the city on June 11, 1805. One of the three judges, Augustus B. Woodward, persuaded the townspeople not to rebuild immediately, but to plan for the metropolis which he envisioned.
That's Woodward. The name just landed.
His plan was based on an equilateral triangle 4,000 feet to the south. Each angle was bisected by a perpendicular line to the opposite side. Where these streets met, a rectangular park was formed. Large circular parks were also at each corner of the triangle. This system could be repeated endlessly, simply by adding new triangles, reversing the point each time. The plan called for a park interrupting each major thoroughfare every 4,000 feet. Judge Woodward did not foresee the effect of parks on through traffic, shown here where 2nd Avenue detours around Taft Park. The plan was opposed because of its conflict with old property lines, its maze of angles, and the arbitrary method used to determine the width of the street. As a result, only the upper part of one triangle, fits with two others, one rectangular part, and half of one circular part were ever built. The bases of these triangles parallel the shoreline rather than a cardinal direction. The existing part of the Woodward plan makes up most of the present central business district. The old Indian trails were improved when demand or military needs necessitated and provided the major land access routes to Detroit. Even today, the major thoroughfares of the city, which radiate from the business district, follow the routes blazed centuries ago by fur trading Indians. These major routes connected rather smoothly with the remnants of the Woodward plan with one exception. It was planned to connect Rogers with Monroe Avenue. But this would have ruined an orchard owned by a Mr. Brush, who successfully blocked this link, and Rogers was built one block north. As a result, thousands of motorists each day must make two turns. A turn to the left avoids the old orchard site. Traffic then travels northward along the west edge of the former grove. Finally, it turns right, and the driver is at last ungrounded. The old French farms were long and narrow to give each farmer access to the river, at that time the only sure means of transportation. The boundaries, drawn at right angles from the shoreline, became roads commonly named after the owner of the adjoining land, such as Brush and Bolian. The farmers had little objection to boundary roads, but resisted cross streets which divided their land. This has resulted in many jogs and dead ends on these streets. Thus, whereas Detroit has an adequate system of routes extending from the shoreline, many cross streets, such as Verner, were built in fragmented bits and are not smooth traffic ways. Even the egotistical Judge Woodward had not intended the avenue he named after himself to become the main street of Detroit. However, it was the only spoke street that paralleled the French farm boundary. Woodward is the line where many cross streets changed their names. Dividing the east and west sides of the city, Woodward is the baseline for most house numbers. In the 1870s, a group of citizens began a campaign for a boulevard to circle the city. An opponent in the Michigan legislature said, "The district through which it is proposed to run is so wet and marshy that the boulevard would be a goose pond during the winter and spring months, and a goose pasture in the summer, for who would ever make use of it as a driveway?" When, in spite of all opposition, Grand Boulevard was built, it too followed the traditional property line, and for the most part is either at right angles or parallel to the river. The exact route was determined by public-spirited citizens who donated 9/10 of the land that was used. The boulevard was little traveled for a decade. With the expansion that came with the auto industry, the route was soon lined with the stately residences of the wealthy. Today, these buildings are used primarily for convalescent hospitals, funeral homes, beauty salons, day nurseries, and other commercial enterprises. The wide boulevard commonly served as a boundary of new development, and thus different people at different times laid out the streets on either side. In some places, these diverse plans did not mesh together well. This has resulted in name changes and jobs. A good example is Second Avenue, one of the city's busiest thoroughfares, where it crosses Grand Boulevard. Outside the boulevard, an early suburb, Highland Park, was an established settlement long before its huge neighbors surrounded it. This city grew around Henry Ford's Model T plant. Its streets were built to conform to its main thoroughfare, Woodward Avenue. When Detroit grew around Highland Park, the street pattern of the two cities did not meet in all places, requiring several jobs, such as this one on Second Avenue. Not only is there an offset at the city boundary, but the older Highland Park streets are narrower than those of Detroit. Just as most of Detroit's older streets were influenced by the early French farms, the newer parts of the city were affected by the American survey pattern. By this time, river frontage was no longer necessary, and the shoreline was completely ignored. The land was divided into square mile sections, using a grid of strictly north-south, east-west lines. The major service roads followed the section lines so as not to cut through farms. The line drawn due west from the old City Hall was considered 0 Mile Road. It is now called Ford Road. 1 mile north is Warren Avenue. Schoolcraft, Benkel, McNichols, 7 Mile Road, 8 Mile, and so forth. As this area was urbanized, traffic developed primarily along north-south streets. Even major arteries in this direction maintained a residential character in the form of apartments or duplex homes. The east-west thoroughfares, however, became long strings of commercial development. One reason for this pattern of growth might be that the commercial streets have an average of 16 cross streets per mile, along which almost all of the homes in the area are built. The residential routes have only 5 cross streets per mile, along which are very few homes. Livernois, the closest north-south street to the city core, has also become commercialized. It is one of the major used car centers of the world. In some exclusive residential areas, the rectilinear grid pattern has been replaced by a complicated system of curving roadways to discourage through traffic. Many of Detroit's traffic problems are located at points where grid and shoreline systems come together. Davidson is a good example. It begins at Van Dyke, runs west, turns, and parallels the river, hitting its cross streets at sharp angles, as shown by its intersection with McNichols. Davidson continues in this direction until it reaches Livernois, where it turns due west again. It doesn't come out exactly on a mile line, however, and through traffic must shift 1 block north to Schoolcraft, 4 Mile Road, as Davidson, as shown here, changes at Wyoming from a 6-lane divided highway to a 2-lane side street. Even the paths of the new freeways are influenced by the grid and shoreline systems of streets. It is cheaper to use existing routes as part of the right-of-way than to cut across the present highway. The ford parallels the river and the lake shoreline almost exactly. The lodge starts perpendicular from the river, runs due west to the grid system, and then follows the Northwestern Highway, an old Indian trail. We have seen that Detroit has had 4 basic patterns of growth. The downtown area, which is a small part of Judge Woodward's plan. The major spoke streets, whose routes were based on old Indian trade. Streets at right angles to the shoreline along old French farmhouses and their perpendicular cross streets. And finally, the north-south and east-west streets of the grid system. Even the recent freeways have conformed to the historic routes which have formed the basic pattern of the city of Detroit.
Yeah, I meant to ask earlier, how many have lived in Detroit at one time? It's always curious. It's just an amazing thing about this area. It's just about everybody. So you see a lot of stuff, you see the cars there, and you have a lot of memories came back. You talking about somebody on Livernois, what'd you say, if you had $50?
Bert Baker.
Bert Baker?
Every street car had a sign, you got $50, I got a car.
Okay. Livernois, yeah, right. Now, what's the foot of Livernois all the way down by the river today, though? Well, it's been there since 1830-something. Fort Wayne. And then the Tuskegee Airmen have their museum there. By the way, I do a lot of Black History tours and stuff. We go down there. They're getting ready to move to City Airport. So they actually will, in the next 2 years, they'll move over there so they can fly planes and stuff like that. So that's cool. So, any other comments or questions about that? 'Cause there's all those cars there and all the way Detroit used to look and stuff. So that was before, that's in the 50s then, apparently that was made. They made I-75 there, I mean, the Chrysler Freeway there, out of Hastings Street, about 1970? Something like that, right about there. The Lodge was put in the late 50s too, right? Lodge, Ford was about 53 or 54. And the Lodge in the late 50s. Any other questions? Yeah, Davison is the oldest freeway beneath the surface in the United States now. So there must be one that's older on the surface. I don't know where that would be. Well, the first pavement is on Woodward Avenue between 6 Mile and 7 Mile. In combination with that Henry Ford factory there in Highland Park. Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah, the first freeway is what's called the Bronx River Parkway in New York.
No, thanks. Bronx River Parkway. That's good. I've been wondering about that. That was on the first, before 43.
That was before, yeah, the day.
Okay, cool.
Was
Right.
Davidson the first freeway?
Well, below the surface, see. It was said that there must have been one below the surface, see, and I didn't know until like 30 seconds ago. This man's right. That now the
Ask
one in
Professor
Bronx.
Hyde
Huh?
Ask Professor Hyde at Wayne
Oh,
State.
Charlie Hyde?
He knows.
He knows, yeah. Yeah, Charles Hyde has written a lot of great books on Detroit's history. And Phil Mason, I should have brought some of these guys' books. I had just on Charles Hyde alone and Phil Mason alone, those two Wayne State professors, written all kinds of great books on Detroit's history. Okay, any other questions or comments before we start the slideshow? Okay, there we go. Now, don't want to have this totally dark. Let's see how this is. So let's have a go. Turn it down a little bit, maybe another. That'll awaken.
Bring that up a little bit.
You might want to follow along. We're on page 2 now. It's number 1, Augustus Woodward and Thomas Jefferson and all this. If you want to follow along, I'm sort of going to wing it here. But you can't get, it's either one way or the other, pretty much.
Bring the projector up a little bit.
I'm going to get a little higher too. This is the main point of downtown, Woodward and Jefferson. And remember, it was Augustus Woodward that was sent here by Thomas Jefferson, our third president, to be a judge, right? And where are we there? What buildings are right on the left there? The gas company, American Natural Resources, and then the Guardian Building.
The old Guardian.
The old Guardian Building. My dad was working there in 1935 when he met my mother as a nurse at Henry Ford Hospital. And she's still living, she's 94 years old. And they went over to Point Pelee on 4 lawyers and 4 nurses, and 2 of them ended up marrying each other. Driving from Point Pelee over to Point Pelee in 1935. But because I was showing her my slides at Wayne State here once, and about 10 years ago when I first started, they said, well, you know, that's where Dad worked when I met him. You know, and I said, she never told me that. I didn't know that. But they had stories at that time about people jumping out, and people were jumping out. How many, jumping out like 9/11? 29. For the crash. My dad learned about that because of the crash. But that's probably our either first, second, or third most beautiful building in downtown Detroit. What the other 2 be, you think, that I'm thinking of? This is my editorial.
The lobby is great.
Well, Penobscot for a long time was the tallest building, but I'm saying in terms of pure beauty, the Fisher Building and the Wayne County Building, people forget about that, especially since it's been all restored now. In the 50s, they put drop ceilings inside there, looked bored bad. Now it's all been taken out, so that building, when you go inside there, is a knockout. We did a Wayne County tour building and an Easter Market tour about 2 years ago. And then the Fisher Building, Wayne County Building, and this building. But the Penobscot Building is no slouch. Those are Art Deco buildings. You can tell Art Deco by the setbacks. You go up here, see, it goes in, and the Penobscot building also has those setbacks. And they have a lot of Aztec and Mayan architecture stuff in there, and Huaca tile in there. Anyway, that's. And then we have City Hall there, and it's now called the Coleman Young Municipal Building, it was City County Building. And the second tallest building in Detroit now is the Comerica Building. For years and years, the Penobscot Building was the tallest building, right? Until the Renaissance Center comes in 1970, they're number one. And the Penobscot Building was second. Now, this came in about 12 years ago. And so it's the second tallest building downtown. So Penobscot's in third place. And of course, this is Marshall Frederick's sculpture here. The Spirit of Detroit. They put the Red Wings, the Pistons jerseys on there. And they do well. I hope it's going to be the Tigers, but recently, the last few days, they've been too good against Minnesota. So that's another story. But that's Larned Street right down here. We're on Woodward Avenue, there's Larned. So let's talk about Larned itself. Who was this guy? Did you know about Woodward Larned? He's coming up next year. Okay, there's Larned. He fought here in the War of 1812, Larned, and his dad fought with George Washington in the American Revolution. And he's buried in Elmwood Cemetery. And there's Larned right there. Now here's two buildings right here. These are new buildings, of course. But the then and the now. Now, what buildings were these before? Who knows your Detroit history, 1950s and before? You got it. Majestic Building was right there. Majestic Building, how many have been in that building before? Okay. Majestic Building was there. It had another name, but I think it was Mobley Building or something like that. Was it Mobley? Tell me.
Where Hudson was?
Yeah.
Was Mobley's apartment
Yeah,
store.
okay.
And he built the Majestic Building and put the M on it. It was what was built as a department store.
Right.
But he went about business, so he had to use the word
A new name.
And named Majestic.
That's it, you got it? Because the M was big, stuck in, it's in there. So we're not Mobley, forget him, he's gone. So we'll call it Majestic. So that's that building there that used to be there, a classic old building. Take a look at the old pictures downtown. Now, this was the site right here where Bank One is, or all the new names, I forget where it is now.
Chase.
Was it? Oh, yes,
Chase.
Chase Manhattan. But that's where Detroit's first skyscraper was. The Hammond Building. This man's knows it right here. People came from all over the Midwest to go to the 10th floor in that building, right about there somewhere, to go up there. And that's Hammond, Indiana. He's the one that invented the refrigerator car for trains. And he's buried in Elmwood Cemetery, too. But people, so that's what the Hammond Building used to be. And that was torn down about late 50s, somewhere. But that's Hammond. So there's Larned. Okay. And this is Campus Marsh is right down here where Copyware is now. Hudson's is over here. Got the idea? We are. Okay. And then there you can see part of our building right there. Penobscot Building. Okay. And here's Larned and Brush. Now Brush was one of the two different Brushes were mayors of Detroit. He's the one that Gratiot Moose is changed because he wanted to keep his orchard intact. And there's Brush Park. That was the Grosse Pointe of Detroit, or the Bloomfield Hills of Detroit after the Civil War. You know where Comerica Park is there? You start going towards the medical center. That was, Detroit was called the Paris of the Midwest because of that neighborhood. Now you're trying to afraid to believe that, right? But that's true. It was called the Paris of the Midwest because there's a lot of French Empire homes there. You know, they had the mansarda roofs and stuff like that. Professor Michael Farrell lives in one of those. You know Michael Farrell, University of Windsor professor? And he lives in one of those homes. And anyway, there's all kinds of Second Empire homes there. Now there's only a few of them left. But there's a lot of new development in that area now. But it's called Brush Park after the Brush family. And a lot of the other streets along there, Adelaide and Alfred, are people in his family. And Elmwood Cemetery, you go to see Edmund, those places are Brush people. There's the Wayne County building over there, part of it. And this is the Millender Center here. I lived here for a year in the early 90s. Robert Millender got told blacks to get into politics. He was Coleman Young's campaign manager, Robert Millender. And Mrs. Millender was living there when I was there in the early 90s. So now some of this, I took these slides maybe 10 to 15 years ago. A lot of this stuff is gone now. This is Lafayette and Beaubien, number 5 here. And Beaubien was a French farmer, but his name now was here. Beaubien was a French farmer who named St. Antoine Street. Anton Beaubien, his name was Antoine Beaubien. His patron saint was St. Antoine. Now, during the American Revolution, of course, now Lafayette was the man who came over here as a 19-year-old man and saved our, you know what, American Revolution, pretty much the French, right? We might have beat the British eventually, but after the Battle of Saratoga, the French figured maybe these guys are going to win, let's join the winning side, knock the Brits down. So Lafayette came over here. And previous to that time, this had another Frenchman's name. Now, who was the guy who founded New France? It starts with C. Oh, no, New France, up in, came to Montreal, Quebec. Champlain. So that street was called Champlain Street. Now that's in that Silas Farmer book I was telling you about. It's got a whole section in there on the name changes. But a lot of this happened since 1890s. It changed back, like Berlin. You get rid of that Berlin with the Germans around, and they put in Benson downtown. And that's not in that book again. That's 1890 and before, so you have to get recent books. But it's Lafayette and Bogan, and what is this for over here? Travers Alley in there. And the old police station, this is all torn down. This is now the Greektown Casino. Right here. Isn't it? Yeah, it's the St. Mary's Church, the oldest German church in Detroit. And this is now the Greektown Casino, which is actually, they torn down the parking lot down. If you haven't been downtown in a while, and the parking lot in Greektown, and they're going to move the Greektown Casino down there. And I don't know what's going to happen to the one they have. I haven't read that yet. Okay. Now Bates, Cadillac Square, Bates was a judge who arrived here about the same time as Woodward and another judge named Witherall. We're both judges. Of course, Cadillac founded Detroit July 24th, 1701. But Bates was a judge. And I also drove the Lewis and Clark thing here recently, in 2002. I spent 75 days. I drove along the Missouri River, all the way up the Columbia River to the Pacific Ocean. Then I came back the route of the first transcontinental railroad. It took me 75 days to do it all. But learning about Lewis and Clark, and after Lewis and Clark got all done, William Clark worked in St. Louis for a while, and I saw this name Bates, and he knew Bates. But Bates somehow got transferred out there and whatever, so it's just kind of interesting how like Lewis and Clark, William Clark meets Bates in St. Louis later on. Okay, now, what are you looking at here? What's this building here? It's Hudson's. We probably all remember where we were when that happened. I was in London, I was shaving, and getting ready to fly home after my 75-day trip to the Soviet Union. That's another story. But it said here on my TV I'm listening, the leading domestic story in the United States today is the implosion of famous downtown department. That's Detroit. I've sort of heard bits and pieces about this. That's when McGuire and his famous associated called home runs. I was catching up with stuff. Well, that's USA. That's right. I just saw it coming down. My London hotel room. The Hudson's building there in October of '98. So that's the Hudson's building down. And over here is the book Cadillac. Right? Book Cadillac. It's the Waterboard building right here. I think. The Lewis Camper building, Waterboard building. So that's the. Oh yeah, here's Soldiers and Sailors Monument. That's been moved, by the way, about 50 feet. It's right in the middle of Woodward Avenue now. You have to drive around it to get down Woodward Avenue. And that's where the Majestic building was, right? Okay. And this Congress now, they named the street Congress Street because they were so happy that U.S. Congress gave them money to build Highway 12, Chicago. And that was thanking Father Richard now. Think about Father Richard when you can think of driving Chicago on Highway 12. Because we were pretty much stuck here by ourselves with no connections, and we wanted to get hooked up with Chicago. And Father Richard, we weren't a state yet, that's the 1820s. And he's our territorial representative. If you're a territory, you're represented down in Congress. And he fought hard to have the Congress, the United States at that time, to get money to build a road between Detroit and Chicago. And so the name of the street, thank you, Congress, for doing something good. I read that somewhere. And Father Richard. And there's Congress again right behind the Wayne County building, Greektown parking. The barbecue place here. So the bar is right in front of you, right in front. Okay. This is Broadway Street, and I sort of, we copied the east, in New York City. The Boston Edison neighborhood, we named that neighbor's one street, Boston, because Boston was cultured. And Edison, and then electricity, you're trying to elevate yourself by So Broadway, I copied that from New York. But this is Gratiot Avenue right here, okay? And right about here's where it makes that turn left because of the Brush Farm. But Brush is just one block over, what is that way? Yes, that way. And this is the Gratiot, and that's the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice, Reporters Court right there. And this is the Tobin Building. Now it's the Albert Kahn Building. But this is about the only place that black doctors and dentists for many years were allowed in. They weren't allowed in the Penobscot Building or the Whitney Book Tower Building. The Tobin Building was the only place black professionals could work. And my Black History tour, I talked about that. Harmony Park's right around the corner here. Greektown's to the right here.
The Khan's clothes.
Yeah, right. And here's Randolph. Now Randolph is just really an interesting, there's many different Randolphs in U.S. history. For number 10, I have down here now William Randolph. One of them started William and Mary College. One of them was Speaker of the House of Burgesses. One of them at the Constitutional Convention said we should have a House and a Senate, instead of just having one or the other, the Virginia Plan, the Great Compromise. And then one of them was going for the Southern argument in the Missouri Compromise of 1820. Remember that? Henry Clay finally got that through, to compromise between the South and the North. And Randolph was representing the Southern side, okay, states' rights and all that kind of thing. And when Randolph didn't like the Missouri Compromise, he challenged Clay to a duel. And so Randolph and Clay, had a duel. And they got out there, back in those days, that was serious stuff. I mean, Hamilton got killed that day. They got all their frilly clothes on and everything. And they both fired and they both missed. They were so happy they missed. They embraced each other afterwards and hugged each other. Oh my God, this is so crazy. And then they became friends afterwards. So I mean, the dueling was the man's that honor thing, all that business. But that's Randolph. I saw that in Encyclopedia last night about 2:30. I was reading through some of this stuff, getting my notes. But that was the last Randolph, who the most famous one. John Randolph, was the most famous statesman. He was a descendant of Pocahontas and John Rolfe. Led south against the Missouri Compromise. Duel with Henry Clay. All right, so that's not that. Quite an interesting street there. Now here's Farmer. Now this is where downtown Farmers Market was in this area. Here's the water board building again. We talked about that a couple times here already on the right. But what's this building right here? People don't talk about this building too much. It looks a lot like the Guardian building, but it's what? The David Stott, S-T-O-T-T. And this other Art Deco building goes straight up with the setbacks. I've only been in that building one time for a party up there about 25 years ago on that major, what do you call it, the top buildings like that. Penthouse or something, it was up there. Here's the Book Tower building. And the Book brothers who lived in Indian Village down there built that building and the Book Cadillac and the Book building. So the Book building is the building that sits next to it. There's Hudson's. Okay. And now this is the downtown library, the one there by Hudson's. And thanks to the Stillmans with their grant, they really restored and fixed that place up. They found an old mural on the wall. It's about almost as long as from there to there. Starting with Cadillac, going all the way to Coleman Young, and it stops there. But I mean, it's all this wonderful mural that had covered up with file cabinets, and it's all kind of messed up, and they got up and cleaned it up. And they have concerts down there, some Sundays or some Tuesdays and Thursdays, things like this. So it's the downtown library. It's really been fixed up right there by where the Hudson's building used to be. And there's a library street. I should get this kind of in the wrong order here.
I used to walk down there when I was a kid.
Yeah.
The east,
Sure. There's a new Cuban restaurant down there right now. Now, Monroe was the first American president to come to Detroit. So that's Monroe Street downtown, and that's Monroe, Michigan. They called it Frenchtown, I think, at first, then they switched to Monroe. And then here's Library Street, right by the library. So that's the library right there. And Gratiot. Wait, Gratiot, I should have worn a Charles Gratiot t-shirt. He was a military commander here. I think we have him coming up later. Maybe we have him right here. Yeah, here it is, right? We do have him right, 15. Colonel Charles Gratiot of General Harrison's Army, the War of 1812, fought at the Battle of the Thames against Tecumseh. And I was just over in Chatham, Ontario recently getting ready for my underground railroad tour to Canada. And if you have a boat on Lake St. Clair, you go up the Thames River to London. Yeah, London. No, not London, Chad. And that's near there is where the Battle of the Thames was fought. Huh? Yeah, the wheels. Oh, yeah, that wild hotel. Yeah, there's stories about that. So here's the Waterbury building again, and there's the Hudson's there, and Brush, and Fort Street is called Fort Street because it started at Fort Shelby. Fort Shelby. The Fort Shelby went to. Let's see. Fort and Brush. That's where you are, right at number 16. Fort Shelby was demolished, and Fort Street began there. And Fort Shelby was over there on the west side there, right about where the federal building, the old federal building was. There's a historic sign there showing where the Fort Shelby was. And he was the guy who threw the British out of Detroit during the War of 1812. You were asking about who Shelby was? And he was the governor of Kentucky, Isaac Shelby, who came up here and threw the British out of Detroit, because the British occupied us for a year during the War of 1812. And named that street after him. And so they named the Fort Street because when they tore down the fort, that street sort of started from there. The Grand River begins in downtown Detroit. And this is Woodward Avenue and Grand River. There's the David Broderick Towers. For many years, the only thing occupied was up here, and then one restaurant downstairs. Finally, the guy's going to get going and make condos out of this. He's been saying all these years, I'm not going to start fixing my building up until something happens in Detroit. And how about for the last 15 years, things have been happening. And you're one of the major problems, so they got him going. So you see a sign down there now. They're making lofts and condos, a lot of buildings downtown Detroit. We had about 40 vacant office buildings for all these years. Now they're starting to be converted into living places. This is one of the jewelry stores here at one time. Which one was this? Myers in that corner? What was the other one? There's two. Well, say it again? Yeah, Rye K and Myers. So this was Myers here, right? Okay. Then Rye K was right along here. Yeah, here's where Grand River begins, with the British spelling of Center Street down there. And I started this one Thanksgiving, I drove all the way to Grand Haven, followed Grand River, and sometimes it ends, like Route 66 when you drive that. And so now it's 96, and then you go back to Grand River. And there is a river called Grand River. I mean, around Lansing it starts, and what? Right about there. Where? Well, no, it's formed before that. Yeah, right, but it's Grand Rapids is big time. But anyway, here's St. Antoine. Yeah, St. Antoine, and I didn't put Woodbridge down there. St. Antoine Woodbridge. St. Antoine, we talked a little bit about him before. St. Antoine Bobin had a ribbon farm here. And then Woodbridge was a farmer, attorney, governor, and he married Juliana Trumbull. And Trumbull was the judge. He moved here from Connecticut, and he was a judge. Went to college at age 13, became a judge at age 16 or something like that. So Woodbridges and the Trumbulls are very next to each other there in Elmwood Cemetery. And the Woodbridge farm was right where the Tiger Stadium is today. Okay, so the Trumbulls and the Woodbridges are very tied in, and there's the Woodbridge Historic Neighborhood right around there too. They have a tour about every September. The Woodbridge Historic area around Wayne State, up from Tiger Stadium. But that's the UND Law School over there. Yeah, Hall? Dowling Hall. Dowling Hall, that Romanesque building. Romanesque has the rusticated stones. Anytime you see arches, you know that's the Italians. And this is the oldest church building in Detroit, actually, right here. This is what church? St. Peter and Paul. That's the oldest church building. Now, the oldest parish, of course, is St. Anne's, 1701. Second oldest parish in the United States. But that's the 8th building that went down there by the Ambassador Bridge. This is the 1841, I think. Wonderful altar there, that Carrara marble there. And so this is Lafayette Park over here with the old Black Bottom area, starting pretty much around Brush Avenue Going to Elmwood Cemetery from Larned to Grash was the old black bottom area they tore out in the 50s. We're going to talk more about that in a few minutes. Okay, and then here's Witherall, another judge who arrived here about the same time as Woodward. And this is right in, this is a bad picture right here, but this is a Central Methodist Church right here in Grand Circus Park. And here's, not Sibley's shoes, but,
5 shoes.
yeah, five shoes. Yeah, it still says 5 over here on the one side. That was the biggest shoe company in the United States. And for my Wayne State students, out of 30 classes, we did 15 field trips or walking all around. You walk right down there, and right about that high in the building, you see about 6 little cowboys working away in their shoes. It's an example of Beau's Arts architecture. On the outside of the building reflects what's going on inside. So they got little guys making shoes. So look up there in the Fife building sometime. Right there by Adams Street and Woodward. And you can see the guys making the shoes. But Witherall was a judge. And then here's Macomb, Alexander Macomb. We talked about him already. Here's some. Being a War of 1812 landowner. And owning Belle Isle, owning Grosse Ile. By the way, Grosse Ile is spelled I-L-E. I did a tour for Grosse Ile people once, and I misspelled it. Belle Isle is I-S-L-E, okay, but we are I-L-E. Yeah, it's sort of like the order, yeah. But this is where people mover, and that's why I get around downtown a lot. Sometimes I avoid all kinds of traffic by Copel Hall and Joe Louis and Renaissance Center area by parking the car out by Grand Circus Park in some cheap lot out there or some free place somewhere. And then for 50 cents you go downtown and avoid all the traffic. But it's getting so popular now, sometimes it's so crowded, it's a real pain. So yeah, you have to sort of play it by ear. But the people who are knowing how to use it, you can use it right and get around easy. Here's Jacoby's Alley. We're on, what number are we on? We're still 22. And that's a street they just created sort of recently. That's where I was, either when the Tigers won the World Series in '68 or they won the pennant. But I was in there, and there's Jim Northrup over there just slapping, just going crazy over there. He was a wild party guy. But Jacoby's a famous old German bar down there. And this Globe building, some Grosse Pointe lawyers have done a lot with that. And here's where Horace and John Dodge did a lot of their work when they were working for Henry Ford. Now, they started working for Henry Ford at first. And then they broke away and joined Walter Chrysler for Chrysler. But and this is the building they almost were going to tear down for the Greektown Casino. That's where that pizza place is. What's the pizza place down?
Pizza Papa?
No, Nicky's Pizza, right in there. But that's the old Dodge. So Horace and John Dodge worked in there. We should have more signs down there about things like this. You know, they finally have a few signs at Woodward Avenue on some of this stuff. Take a walk down Woodward now. I saw it during the Super Bowl. They just put them up. But you know, they don't have to do those giant $2,000 ones. They can make just little plaques. In Paris and London both have little signs about this big. Get them, put some kind of powerful nails and put them on the wall and makes it cool. You know? Oh, so Walter Chrysler started Chrysler Corporation. Got Plymouth and Dodge and DeSoto and Chrysler, right? Is that it? Plymouth, Dodge, DeSoto, and Chrysler. And Charlie Hyde did a book on the Dodge Corporation recently. And he's been speaking about that. There's a club in Detroit called the Algonquin Club. And you heard about that before? They meet 1 month in Windsor, 1 month in Detroit, and they talk about Detroit history. It goes sometimes. Now right here is about here's the plaque here at Griswold and Jefferson about the first fort in Detroit. It's one of these old plaques. So it talks about one of the first priests being killed here. This is the Ford Auditorium. No, it's not Ford. This is the Ford UAW Center. And it was the Veterans Memorial Building. Yeah, that's it. And this is the plaque here talking about the Indian Massacre. But the fort walls came kind of pretty much right along here. See this? The fort wall here, maybe out that way, down to Shelby. And then Larned's back this way, where the original fort was. Fort Pontchartrain. And so there's where that is now. It's a UAW Ford Retraining Center. People have been downsized, trying to get new training. Not exactly sure what goes on there. But some of the stuff. Now, here's where Ford Motor Company began. And I did a lot of stuff Of course, you go to the Rouge Tour, which is really cool. But this is where Ford Motor Company began, right here in Hart Plaza, 1903, in Malcolmson's coal shed, coal yard. And his granddaughter is still living in Grosse Pointe, Sarah something. And before he gave the company, and these are some of the major players. Horace Rackham was a lawyer. His house is in Boston Edison. And John Anderson, he lived in Indy Village. His house burned down, but his carriage house is still there. These two guys were lawyers for Henry Ford early on. James Cousins worked for him for a while and then left. Horace Dodge, Strelo, Horace and John Dodge. Anyway, it started at Hart Plaza, Ford Motor Company. And this is also where they have an underground railroad marker. Ed Dwight talks about this was put up in 2002. Ed Dwight did this. He also did a great sculpture in downtown Battle Creek for Sojourner Truth, because that's where she's buried. And he did a great thing there in downtown Jackson. So when you drive in Chicago, and you take 12 one way and take a 94 back or whatever. Do 12. But you get up and check out downtown Jackson. And he did that art down there, and he also did this right. This is George D. Baptiste, this amazing guy who worked for President Harrison. The president lived 1 month, drank too much lemonade on Inauguration Day, he got sick at his stomach, then he was kind of cold, he got a cold too, and then he got pneumonia, and he dies. So George D. Baptiste was working in the White House as an orderly or something. And while the president dies, what do I do now? I'm going to go back to Madison, Indiana, and work in the Underground Railroad. And then someone said, you should go to Detroit. There's more activity up there. So he comes to Detroit and gets a big boat down here and pretends like he's taking over corn and things like that, but he's sneaking slaves over there too. So on the Black History Tour, I talk about him. His house is right there by the Blue Cross Blue Shield building. But he's pointing over to Canada right there, saying we want to get our freedom over there, cross over. So after 1850, when the Fugitive Slave Law came in, blacks pretty much had to get to Canada. Before that, you were just free if you got to Ohio. But after that, slave catchers could come and catch you in the northern states. So after 1850, blacks felt they had to get to Canada. And so that's some of that. But here's the French part here, with Cadillac here, and the details of who came with him on the trip there, and details about the landing. This was put in July 24th, 2001. Anybody else down there that real hot day? Yeah. Just totally hot day. They reenacted the whole thing. But these are the people that came with Cadillac, as far as they know. A lot of French, mostly all French people. The second in command was an Italian guy. And there's Cadillac right there. Kind of a pompous guy. And here he is. And they left Montreal on June 5th. They got here on July 23rd. They went right by Hart Plaza going down there, and guess where the first night was? Grosse Ile. Grosse Ile. And this is too much of a swamp, and we're down too low, it's no good. And someone said, well, we just passed a real high spot back there. Let's go back up there. So they went back up to the Hart Plaza. They put their fort in there, but that was high. You can also see them on the Ambassador Bridge if the British are coming up the river. And you have a high spot. And so they put the fort in there, and landing at Cadillac right there. Okay. Now here's a new monument downtown. It's, well, the last 3 years, this thing right here is the soldiers, it's the, I guess, where are we here? The Labor Monument, number 33. Robert Barr, I went to high school with him in Grosse Pointe there, and Sergio DeGusti, I taught with him at Wayne. But these two guys went together and made a labor monument. Detroit's all about the GM, Ford, Chrysler, and all this. Well, how about labor? So they put this monument in about this, represents, and they have all kinds of things around there about George Beatty and Walter Reuther and stuff. A little space right there in the middle, indicating there's still more work to do. But this is mostly DeGusti's work there, and then Barr got these big stones all around. You can't see it too well here. But this has been done about the last 3 years. There's the Penobscot building there again. And there's the Buell building. For the Savarad, is that where they have the Savarad Club in there? Savarad Club? So that's the name of it, in the Buell building. So that's the name of that river that went through there. Remember we talked about that river? And actually, when I was typing this last night, I could not think of that club. So where are we in this? I left the space for that. Where are we at? Well, yeah, 37. The stream was called, and I was doing this about 1:30 last night. It's the Savarog River. That they put, later on, they put the club in there, and they called it the Savarog. So there was a river that went right around through there, see? That went through Coble Hall. So the fort was kind of right in between the Detroit River here and the Savarog River over there. Okay. So there's once again those streets where the fort was, pretty much, right? Larned. Oh, Griswold was a guy from Connecticut that maybe Woodward knew. I was in Connecticut recently, and I asked some people about it. I saw something about Griswold. He wasn't a major player, I guess, but anyway, he's a Connecticut guy. But this time was Jefferson, Virginia, and Larned fought in the War of 1812 here, and Shelby, the Kentucky governor. And then why do we have State Street? Why is there a street called State Street? In terms of Michigan's history, in terms of our government, Detroit's history. Detroit's first capital, Michigan's first capital was Detroit, Capitol Park. So the State Street goes right down there, and our first governor, Stephen T. Mason, the boy governor, is buried right there in Capitol Park. There's a statue of him down there, and it's called State Street. And there's Shelby. That's clear there. And there's Clifford. Now, there used to be a part of that one river went through there, a man named Cliff, and he had to ford the river. So somehow, I read that somewhere about cliffs that we're going to call it Clifford because he had to walk across the creek here. And that's the United Artists Theater down there. And I'm taking this picture right in front of the Michigan building on the left here, where who built their first car there? Henry Ford built his first car there in the Michigan building, was signed there. So I decided to add on something about Elmwood Cemetery coming next because of that. The United Artists Theater right there, now that's where they opened Gone with the Wind. United Artists and Music Hall were both arguing about this. You know, who should get the first thing? Hollywood finally says, well, they should both open the same day. And they gave Detroit a special thing. United Artists and Music Hall, Gone with the Wind. But, so let's go over here now. Let's take a look here at the Central Methodist Church. And there's where you see Fikes, right there. See that? The Fike building with the shoes? Okay. Now here's the man now in Elmwood Cemetery who owned the building there that Henry Ford built his first car in. And I met a lady at Hardy once, and I said, name tag Redford. I said, wait a minute, you're not related to the Henry Ford? And she was. So Redford owned the building there that used to be where the Michigan Theater was. And that's where the first garage door comes from here. So you have to follow on here, number 38. What's the deal about the first garage door was right there. Now what happened? Who knows the story? Henry Ford built his car. And he gets he's got a whole car and no way to get it out. So he gets excited in the middle of the night now, and I think the landlord lived upstairs, and the owner, his wife was somebody, Eleanor? Claire Ford, yeah. Claire Ford, you shouldn't do this now, this time of night, you're going to wake everybody up, but he still did it anyway, and drove out on Grand River Avenue and stuff. And so that was the first garage door, right there. And he was sleeping upstairs, he got awakened by it. Those kinds of stories about history make it kind of funny. So, the Irish guy. And right next to his grave in Elmwood Cemetery is the last one in Elmwood Cemetery. Fishing poles for the horses. There's Hiram Walker right over there. So Elmwood Cemetery, if you don't do that place, you should get down there. If you go in the entrance, you stop at the gate, they'll give you all this literature about the 27 mayors, the senators, the blacks, all these different things. It's a wonderful place to go. I mean, it sounds strange maybe, but... And Bagley made his money with chewing tobacco. What time should we end this? 8:30 or what? You tell me. Quarter to 9? Is that all right? Okay, quarter to 9. If you want to go, you can leave anytime. I won't feel offended if you have to go. We can escape the world here by 9/11, all this stuff, right? So let's do this. You know, Bagley made his money doing what? Tobacco industry. You know, tobacco, remember the tobacco? The buildings used to see over there? And he specialized in chewing tobacco. So he made chewing tobacco, and he donated the money for the Bagley Fountain. Okay? The Bagley Fountain for the poor people to have to drink water downtown. Right? He said it was mainly for them. So that's Bagley. And I don't know where that fountain is. They said it's going to come back. The Kearns clock is back, by the way. Kearns clock is back. And here's Griswold again, in Grand River, and here's the Kresge store on Woodward Avenue here. 5 and 10 cents right there. I like to look at those old signs before the building gets taken down. There's one on Kirchville Avenue right near my house that says Notions and Dry Goods. Notions and Dry Goods. I got a picture of that before they tore the building down. There's a gang that sprayed their stuff on. They just missed it. I'm sure they weren't paying attention to that. They just could have just got the whole thing. They didn't. Okay, Cass Avenue, probably our most famous person. Yeah, here, because someone asked me, here's number 44. I am most famous politician from Michigan. He had arguments with Lincoln for Michiganders and Michiganians. He was an explorer, territorial governor, attorney, senator, secretary of war under Andrew Jackson, presidential candidate in 1848, lost to the Whig Zachary Taylor, and secretary of state under James Buchanan. And if you seek a Pleasant Peninsula, look around you. That was his thing. Now, what about Times Square? Why is it called Times Square? We're not just copying New York, and of course we are in a way. The newspaper, that's where the Detroit Times building was, right in that little triangle, right? I can't really remember that part too, that's torn down in the 60s. Okay. Right behind the Lindell AC.
There you go.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what that is.
Yeah, that's too bad, they tore that down.
Six today.
Yeah, oh yeah, me too, a lot of times. Lindell AC, Times Square, this is the Home building over here. Who knows your architecture? What kind of capitals are those right there? Well, it starts with I. Ionic. There's Roman, there's Ionic, Doric, and Corinthian. Corinthian's a real fancy one. The Ionian Sea, and that's the old Leland Hotel. Over there. Now here's Lewis Cass's grave, and he's in a sarcophagus. It could be these up there, but usually they're underneath. I think it's too short there for him up there. Sarcophagus above the ground.
He's there.
He's up there, huh?
He's up.
Oh, okay. Could be. But he invented the slogan, if you see the Pleasant Peninsula, look around you. I mean, he designed that logo. So he was really a man of all seasons, so to speak. A Renaissance man. And then someone said about some of the letters earlier. The letters are right there, as well as Canfield's, right near your Cass. And then the brushes are right over there close by, too. And then I'm making a point here about a lot of people who are born in the East, and especially after 1820, they invented the steamship around that time, and the Erie Canal went through. So if you got to New York City, you go through the place where you come in. The Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island and all that. Then you get on the Hudson River, and you go up to Albany. And then you used to have the Corson across there or some way, but now with the canal, you can stay on water all the way. Then Albany, you get the Erie Canal, and you go right to Buffalo. And then the steamboat there in Buffalo, and you're right to Cleveland, or Detroit, or Chicago. So Detroit started to fill up a lot. In the 1820s, by 37, we're a state. But so this guy was born in Chester, Pennsylvania. He used to live right near there, Darby, Philadelphia suburb. And then the Michigan fight song, it goes champions of the West. See, we were the West before California was even. And this is the Celtic cross for the Scottish people, and that's why I am Scottish, but the English people. There's no beginning, there's no end, Alpha and Omega. If you're good on this earth, you'll go to heaven in a complete cycle. You just keep on going in a circle. So there's a lot of neat stuff in the cemeteries there. That's an Elmwood Cemetery. And here's Park Place and then Times Square too. And keep on going here a little faster. Here's Adams Street here, our second president. And that's where the Woodward plant kind of ends right there. And that's a building, I've lost it, the name of that building is. It was Kresge's headquarters for a while. And the guy lived there. The Kales building. Thanks a lot for giving me up. I've been thinking about this the last day and a half. But the Kales lived in Indian Village. I know, right? Now, the Kales building has been vacant for 35 years until about a year ago. Now it's fully occupied with people living in it. It's lots. I mean, that building was vacant all these years. And this was a real party at one time right down through here, on Park Street, Park Avenue. And this is another classic shot. I'm so glad I have this one. Because what's here now? Comerica Park. This is Adams Street and Witherell. And this is the Wolverine Hotel, where Hank Greenberg, the only place he could stay is a Jewish person. Jewish people, forget about blacks, they know it. Even Jewish people had discrimination. And he had to stay there and did all his home runs. I've heard that story before. He could go to other places, but he didn't feel that comfortable. So he stayed in that hotel for a while. When I heard about Hank Greenberg. And on purpose, they gave him a whole bunch of ball fours. He's going to break that home run record for the right-handers. And they didn't want a Jewish guy to break Hoover had the record before. But then these buildings are what now? This is YMCA and YWCA over here. They tore those down. They say part of that stuff, if you go in the gem of the century, some of it's in there. You have the little light up there, and then up there is some of the stained glass is from one or the other. And Detroit College of Law, where Dennis Archer went, that was torn down too, to make Comerica Park. So what number are we on here right now? 50, Adams and Park, okay, Adams and Witherell. I put this in about Hank Greenberg. They had a wonderful movie on Hank Greenberg's life at the Detroit Institute of Arts. They have those films on weekends down there, and sometimes they're crazy, but sometimes they're really neat. But don't write those things off all the time. They're interesting. Now here's the Cadillac Hotel and Washington Boulevard. At one time it was called, it started out being Washington Boulevard. Then after Anthony Wayne threw the British out of this area, they named it Wayne Boulevard. Then they went back to Washington later on. Now we're back in my neighborhood here, Verner and Seminole. Now this is something I just learned recently. I figured that they named the street after the Seminole Indian tribe. Now, I mean, it really was, but actually there was a lot of horse racing going on at the time. And the Seminole horse and the Iroquois horse were doing a lot of horse, and they won a lot of races. So the developers of Indian Village, they picked an Indian tribe, like Indian Village. It sounds kind of romantic and salesy people who sell houses. But they were thinking of the horses at that time. They named a horse after the Seminole Indians from Florida and the Iroquois from New York. But I live in that street, Seminole. And now Verner, now when you think of Verners, you think of what? Ginger ale. But the street was really named after the fire commissioner. And he is, let's see here. Yeah, number 53. Benjamin Verner was the fire commissioner, and he's buried in Elmwood Cemetery. And that's what they named the street after him. If you want to find his brother now, he's in Woodbury Cemetery over on the west side. The Arabs over there by Rougeland. There's another cemetery. Detroit's four coolest cemeteries are Elmwood and Mount Elliott downtown together. Then Woodbury way over there, and then Woodlawn out in the state fairgrounds. And that's really totally pretty. There's one part of that. I mean, after Elmwood, Woodlawn's the second prettiest. But Woodbury has a lot of people there too. But that's where the Verner's ginger ale guy is in Woodbury. And what else we got? And then this is Ben Verner in Elmwood Cemetery. And that picture. That's Benjamin Verner right there. And the Iroquois, which talked about Iroquois, was named after the Indian horse. They had horse racing right there in part of Indian Village. Was a horse track. Then where Henry Ford beat the guy from Ohio, the Winton from Ohio, was down there at a racetrack around Jefferson and Commerce, or Algonquin. There was a racetrack around there. And that was Grosse Pointe or Hamtramck Township. And so they talked about the Grosse Pointe race where Henry Ford finally got respect by racing and beating Winton from Ohio. That race took place down there. Number 9? What?
1901.
What?
His car was 99.
Oh, 99. Okay. But he won that race and they finally gave him respect. And I don't know if he started his second company there or third, but Ford Motor Company was his third company, right? So after that race, did he form his Ford Motor Company that was successful then? I think that's when it happened.
Yes, he had the Detroit Automobile Company.
Yeah, Detroit Automobile Company first. Okay.
Right, that was the first one, I think.
Okay.
The third one is where Horace, the Dodge brothers were investors, and James Cousin.
Our class.
And that became the one that...
Okay. And the first factory was at Mag and Bellevue, by the way, near where I lived there in the village. But when you go to Greenfield Village, you see the little Ford place. That's a replica of the Mag and Bellevue place. But that didn't last long. Then they went to the Paquette plant. Now that's a place you could tour every Saturday morning between like May and September, and by Preservation Way, and I've mentioned them all day. But they do tours every Saturday morning between May and September. 5 different tours downtown. They do Tuesday night tours too. And I got their phone number on my tour sheet. And then also another, Mary Chase Perry developed Wabic tile. And Mary Chase Perry came from the youth team and had this idea about tile, but needed someone to help her fire this stuff up. And he was a dentist. And they used to make false teeth because we didn't have pressed toothpaste and fluoride in the water and all that with teeth falling out. So dentists made all kinds of false teeth. So they teamed up together, Horace Hawkins and Mary Chase Perry, to make Wabic a real good thing. And they are going gangbusters right now with their new director.
What street is that house?
That's right at Parker and Lafayette. Next street over is Indian Village, Seminole. It's on Parker and Lafayette right here. And Mary Stratton in the backyard here. Mary Chase Perry married her husband Stratton in the backyard. On my Wabic tile tour, we go right by here. And Seaburn is also a neighborhood there, a street there in West Village, where we are right there. And this is the Julius Melcher house. Jerry Melcher was a painter. Julius was the sculptor who did a lot of great things. And Jerry built this for his dad, the painter, and this is still down there in West Village on Seaburn Street. That's a real bad slide here. It's Seminole and Mack, I think. I'm going to make sure that is what's going on here. Here's Mack and Van Dyke. Van Dyke was a mayor of Detroit during the 1850s. And Andrew Mack was from Hamtramck, and he was some kind of commissioner there. He's in Elmwood Cemetery. We talked about Grand Boulevard in that movie there, you know. There was some talk about Grand Boulevard being too far out there in the country when they were doing it. But did you hear that part about 9/10 of the property was donated by people? They give the money to the city. And they thought people wouldn't live that far out there. Then, of course, the Howard Drive comes in the 1920s, right? That goes all the way around. And they thought, oh, nice. They'll never live beyond that. And the whole Detroit's all inner city or something like that. So things have changed. Now, Charlevoix was only here in Detroit for about 1 year, 1721, I think. But he made such an impression, someone liked him, made a street for him. So I think he came from Charlevoix is up there. So that's where Charlevoix comes from. I got that out of Silas Farmer's book. He's just here 1 year. And that's Mary Kirchhoff married Cyrus Fields. And that's what I heard about her. And Cyrus Fields' house is still down there on Field Street. In Kirchhoff, the house is still there. You can put the corner where it is. But what number are we on right now? 64? Yeah, southwest corner of Kirchhoff is Moses Field. And that's the street where Honest John's bar used to be. The real crazy Honest John. He would be just a really funny guy to get you outrageously obnoxious. Ever been to the bar? He's moved back home to the Cass Corridor, where he grew up as an illegitimate kid. He's a crazy guy, but anyway, that's the street that he used to live on there. For his bar on Field Street. But that home where Mary Kirchhoff and Cyrus Field lived is still there. And Canton thrown in here, you know, in the late 1890s, trading with China and Japan was all the rage with art. I mean, some of these guys would think, what's his name? A couple different artists that have the art that work with the DIA. They went on boat trips and go all the way over to China and Japan and get stuff. So they about that time they were naming streets around Grand Boulevard. That was when Canton was Canton, China, kind of famous. I went there in 1978. Jefferson and Bellevue, it was a clear view of Bell Island. Jefferson and Bellevue, that's why there's a Bellevue, and that's what they call it then. And at Mack and Bellevue, to go up there, that's the corner where Henry Ford's first factory was. Right in that area.
Half brewery.
Perhaps?
Half
No.
brewery.
Well, there was a brewery there. No, wait.
Pfeiffer.
No, Regal. I think Regal.
No, it was Pfeiffer.
Well, Pfeiffer.
Pfeiffer Brewery. Culver.
Yeah, well, Pfeiffer's right around the corner. The Pfeiffer's words were still up there. Pfeiffer's. My brewery tour in June, we did that. But right behind that, and actually the Hudson factory is there too. On that same street is where Henry Ford's factory was. The Hudson building, the first Hudson factory is there. The second one was torn down at Connors and Jefferson. But right behind that is the Pfeiffer's building. And then Regal beer is, I don't know about the Pabst, I thought that was a Milwaukee beer.
It's still a long time ago.
Okay, well, then you must know. I want to argue with that one.
I think Regal was down around
Okay.
that Cadillac.
All right. Robert Elliott started Mount Elliott Cemetery, and guess who was the first guy buried in his own cemetery? Robert Elliott. He was down at St. Mary's Church watching him being built, and a log fell off, hit him in the head, and he died. So, and he's there in Mount Elliott Cemetery. He was a sculptor, not a sculptor, an architect, and a builder, and he's and I made a joke here about Mount Clemens here now, okay? Because I was doing this last night, and I knew once. Now, why is it called Mount Clemens? Why? Where's the mountain?
High ground, right?
Yeah, high ground.
It's high ground, but some of them said it
Is
was.
there any story about, there was a Clemens, I learned about him somewhere.
Yeah.
Christian Clemens.
Christian Clemens, yeah.
But what about the mountain?
He
or
said
hill?
his Indian friend told him
High
to mount
ground.
on the horse, mount.
Okay, I get it. But that's the same thing. But the same thing, Mount Elliott Cemetery, if you're standing at Verner and Mount Elliott, you could roll a bowling ball from there all the way to the Detroit River. And that was called High Street at one time. It was called, the old books, it was High Street, it was high there, and so that Mount Elliott was kind of like a mountain, but it wasn't like just a slope. So Verner used to be called High Street, and Mount Elliott Cemetery is right there. Okay. And there he is, Robert Elliott, inside of Mount Elliott Cemetery, of course, the first guy. There he is again. And he's right next to Alfred Chevrolet right here. Now this is not the guy who started Chevrolet is Louis Chevrolet. Where is he buried? Indianapolis Speedway infield, or the and this is his son here, who are buried right next to Robert Elliott. And here are the two Moross brothers. Moross Road, 7 Mile Road. I got a little story on that. I'll shorten things up. We're going to spend a couple minutes here. Got about 9 more to go. But one of them was associated with drinking and Father Richard and all that. You enjoy that. Moross House is the oldest brick house in Detroit. It's still down there on Jefferson Avenue. Right next to the Sibley and the Trowbridge House. The two oldest wooden houses are all within about a 3-block area. Trowbridge and Sibley and Moross houses are the 3 oldest houses right along East Jefferson there. And there's Christopher Moross. And there's Victor Moross right there. One of them made bricks and one of them had a bar. Now here's Waterloo associated with what nationality and what group? The Belgians. And where Napoleon had his last stand out there. And so the largest collection of Belgians in the world outside of Belgium was on Detroit's east side at one time. And I finally did a Belgian tour 2 years ago. I couldn't get any Belgians to want to go back down there. But we went to Casual Cafe, we did it. We went down the old Lady of Sorrows there. With the buffalo. We call them buffaloes, and then they call the French frogs. Yeah. But the Carhartts are buried in Woodbury Cemetery, but I don't know about the house. Did you know where they lived? Oh, really? The Carhart. Really? Okay. No, I didn't know that. Now, Robert Bradley was a famous black who was involved with the formation of the NAACP and also a minister of Second Baptist Church. The oldest black church in the Midwest is our Second Baptist Church in Greektown. There's a famous minister there, and there he's buried in Elmwood Cemetery. And there's a Shane family. Now, most of the Shanes, the French Catholics, are in Elmwood. Somehow one got over here. In Elmwood. Now, Prince Hall was a black man who wanted to join the Masonic order. They wouldn't let him in from Massachusetts, so he formed his own order of Masons, and they're called the Prince Hall Order. They're McDougal and Gratiot. And there's Werner again. And there's Franklin for Ben Franklin in Rivertown, for the warehouse district. And then here's Ryapel, the silversmith, that came over right after Cadillac got here. He's buried in Mount Elliott Cemetery. And then Atwater, now, Augusta Woodward had a friend named Reuben Atwater. That was kind of cool. But it's also, that street was at the water. Did you go right along there? That's where the landfill started, at the water right there. So it's double reasons why it's Atwater. It was at the water at one time, and he had a friend named Reuben Atwater. So that's kind of cool. Yes, ma'am?
Who is John R.
Oh, John R. Williams, Detroit's first mayor. Yeah, John R. Williams, I actually have that in, didn't have it in. It's a major mistake. John R. Williams, there was another John Williams, they kept getting it mixed up, so you threw the R in there. I think that's maybe the last one. That was the last one. Okay. That's it. You guys are really good to listen to. It's very fun to have a comment and listen to this. Yes, sir.
I believe there's a
Freud? Well, they say Freud down there or something, but it's Freud after the Austrian mind sex guy. Yeah, same guy. They say Freud down there, yeah. And we say for Goethe and Foul. So we mispronounce some of these words. Yeah. Yes, sir. Where? Where are those? Really? But he said, yeah, it's A, B, C, D. Yeah, it is good. Like New York City, you know right where you are. You know, 32nd and 56th, a ton of nights, but you're not giving credit to people. But you know where you are. You're your boss.
What happened years ago, the old city hall had niches and statues.
Oh, yes, well, those four guys, the four Frenchmen, they're back up here. That's what Julius Melcher, when they tore down City Hall, they saved those four Frenchmen. Marquette, LaSalle, Marquette, LaSalle, Richard, and Cadillac. And they're on Wayne's campus today. Right there by the Joe Warren statue at 3rd and Warren. You go down a little further, and they're back in the bushes there. And they saved those four guys on those niches. Cadillac, LaSalle, Marquette, and Father Richard. And they saved them. I'm glad I should have mentioned that. The Yantadegan Club, it's a real exclusive club. I know someone who knows someone who's a member there. It's really kind of up, you know. You couldn't wear a t-shirt, you caught wearing a t-shirt, you wouldn't get it. It's a real exclusive club. I think Hassel Ford's in it. That's right, Hassel Ford's in it. But it's right there by the Morass House. The Morass House, Yantadegan Club, right in that neighborhood, High Rent District. Oh, you want to thank you so much.
Well, we want to thank Stuart McMillan for coming here. Give him a round of applause. Our next program we're offering will be October 28th. We are going to be offering discounted train rides. Starting at Joy Boulevard, you'll be able to take a train ride over through Selfridge Field and to the Military Museum. So if you show your Historical Society membership card, you get a discounted ticket. So we hope you can join us. It'll be a little fall harvest train ride. Oh, yes, and Stuart will be rejoining us at our February general membership meeting, talking about Wabic tile, Wabic pottery, so we hope you can come back. Thank you again.
Okay.